Hello. Welcome back to the Doc Fitness Podcast. I am your host, David O'Connor, and you are listening to episode 60 of the podcast today. So today brings back an old style episode that I used to do. It was basically called Monday Thoughts, and it was a tidbit of information that was floating around in my head from the previous week. It was designed to help you move forward in terms of a mindset perspective thing, right? Those quickly fell off the face of the earth because they did not suit my schedule to record them, and I just stopped doing them. And I've been thinking about it a lot lately and bringing back in shorter style episodes to get across a small bit of information that I might write about in my weekly emails. I write an email on a Monday and I write an email on a Friday. It goes out to a couple of thousand people. And usually I have a lot of small little nuggets of information in there. And this podcast expands on some of those over time as well. So that's what this short style episode today is about. So I want to talk to you about learned helplessness theory. All right. So I came across this a few years ago, and it was only recently when I finished reading one of my latest books that it was brought up again in terms of how we're conditioned to do things based on what our past experiences have been. And first of all, let's get into what learned helplessness theory is, right? It was a concept learned by accident, I believe, by two psychologists, or one main psychologist, Martin Seligman. And I think later on, he got more people on board working with it when he discovered it. But Martin Seligman and Stephen Mayer were the main guys behind this. They had initially observed helpless behavior in dogs that were classically conditioned to expect an electrical shock after hearing a tone. So what they did was that they put these dogs, right, into three groups. And in one group, the dog was wearing a harness and nothing happened. In the second group, the dog was wearing a harness, and then the tone would go off and the dog was electrically shocked. But the dog could stop that shock at any time by pressing its nose, I think, off a button on the wall, right? The third group, same harness, same light, same shock. But the key difference here was they were not able to stop the shock. Even though the button was on the wall, I think it did not work for them. So the way that the third group was shocked was they were shocked the same as the second group. So the second group and the third group were shocked at the same time. But when the dogs in the second group turned it off and figured out how to turn it off, the dogs in the third groups, they stopped being shocked as a result of that. So the dogs in the third group learned that I'm getting shocked randomly here. I don't know what's going on, so I'm just going to accept it. So they whined and they just accepted the shocks and they just thought they were random. So the second part of that experiment then, right, they put those dogs into a shuttle box. So basically, like, picture like a little box or a little room even, and the floor is going to produce the shock this time, I believe. And there was a small low barrier wall in the middle of that box. So basically the dog could jump over the barrier if they were being shocked. So again, they put the three groups back in. The first set of dogs, when the shock came for the first set of dogs this time, they simply jumped over the barrier. They learned straight away to get out of that shock. Done. The second dogs, who were initially shocked, but they were able to stop the shock by pressing their nose on the button, when they were shocked in the second experiment, again, they jumped over the barrier and they stopped the shock because the floor wasn't shocking them anymore. But the third group, the group that was in the harnesses, getting shocked in the first experiment, but couldn't stop it, and they just thought it was random, when they were shocked in the second experiment, they just accepted it. They didn't jump over the barrier. They didn't even try to look for a solution because they had already accepted that from their initial experiment, which was basically showing signs of helplessness behavior. They accepted their fate. They lied down on the floor. They took the shocks. They whined and bitched about it. And that was it. And since then, I think that was back in, I could be wrong here now, 1960s, 1970s, that was discovered. But since then, they've gone into learned helplessness in behavior in children, how to counteract that, how to stop that. And I think there's a good explanation of it here. I have my notes in front of me that learned helplessness theory is the view that clinical depression and related mental illnesses may result from such real or perceived absence of control over the outcome of a situation. So that's in relation to humans. Learned helplessness is related to the concept of self-efficiency, the individual's belief in their ability to achieve goals. Now, where does that fit in from a health and nutrition perspective? We see it on a lower scale. It mightn't be as extreme, but we do see it where certain people are conditioned to go about their training and nutrition based on what they've done in the past, based on their previous experiences and their previous behaviors. And if you look at it like this is why I have such beef with slimming clubs, with meal plans, with people who do not help the client at the core level and they just treat them as fucking robots. That if somebody goes through a slimming club and they have a terrible experience and they go through that slimming club on and off for 5 or 6 years, even longer in some cases, that person has learned pretty much nothing. They've learned that if I go to the slimming club, I get results. But then when they know that when they stop, everything goes back to square one and they're actually making things progressively worse over time. That person may, as a result, learn to be helpless with their nutrition. They believe that, I can never be helped. I can never stick to this. I can never do this for myself. And that is a real thing. That happens. We deal with clients like that a lot of the time. A large majority of our clients have been scarred by either PTs, slimming clubs, or previous dieting behaviors that they've just brought on themselves. And a lot of that is taking the time and effort to slowly undo those. And obviously then if we need to refer out to a psychologist or if they need to get some therapy behind things because there's deeper rooted issues there, we do that because there's only so far as nutritionists that we can get to help a client that may need to just hash out some stuff with a therapist over time. Because that's what learned helplessness can result in for humans. Some common symptoms of it over time can be failure to ask for help because you may not have been able to do that in the past. You just haven't done it, or whatever your experience today, you haven't asked for help. So we become terrible at asking for help. Frustration, giving up, lack of effort, low self-esteem, poor motivation, procrastination. They're all signs of this stuff where if we have experiences with learned helplessness from our childhood or even past experiences like I've talked about, these symptoms can arise for that, and which then can further lead to depression and mental illnesses and anxiety and super high levels of anxiety, et cetera, et cetera. Now, the thing is that I think cognitive behavioral therapy and basically talking to a therapist has been shown to help with this. Because it's all well and good me saying this in a podcast and going through it from a nutrition perspective. Whereas if you have a bad diet experience in the past, we don't want our clients to believe that that's the only way forward. And that's the angle I'm coming from with it. It's to prove to you that just because you've done a certain thing in a certain way in the past does not mean that it's going to be like that for the future. And that is what we work so hard to do for our clients. It's the same with training. If you go to a public gym and you fucking despise it, you hate it, you're intimidated by the people, you're intimidated by the way the gym is laid out, you're intimidated by the weights, even the trainers there, and you just had a bad experience, that doesn't mean that every single gym is like that. That doesn't mean that the next gym you go to has to be like that, if you get me. There is better things out there, is essentially what I'm saying. There's better ways around it. Yes, believe it or not, there's a way that you can enjoy your training year round. That doesn't mean you're going to be super motivated to go to the gym every day. It means that on the bigger picture level, you enjoy it. On the bigger picture level, you see progress from it and you know that it's a part of your life and you know that it's improving your lifestyle. You can, just like you can enjoy your nutrition. Nutrition does not have to be miserable. Fat loss is not a fucking thing where it has to be 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And if you're not on a fat loss plan, that everything else goes to pot. What about fucking Christmas time? What about going on holidays? What about social events? It's learning how to do these things and still live our life is what we do best, and we want to teach our clients that year round. And we do that through small habit and behavior change over time, educating our clients and showing them that just because you've done a certain thing in the past does not mean that it needs to stay that way for the future. That is all I wanted to get across with this podcast. Hopefully that will have thrown off a few light bulbs in your head to make better decisions for the future. That is all I wanted to get across with this. By looking at those dogs, I just kind of expected things to happen, expected to get shocked. Expected for you, that might mean expecting a gym to be miserable, expecting your nutrition to be miserable, expecting things to not be fun. If you're expecting that before you've even started something or gone back into something, it's probably going to happen because you're conditioned yourself into thinking that that's that way. And it doesn't need to be like that. What you may need to do from here is seek out a professional that can help you with your training and nutrition. Somebody that you can instill your trust into. And ask for help. It's as simple as that. As well, we've seen it over the past 8 years of us coaching here in Doc Fitness. A lot of people have ways and behaviors around training and food based on the way they think day to day, based on the way they see the world, based on how they've been conditioned and what they've experienced throughout their life. And a lot of the time, not a lot of the time, but a large majority of the time, a lot of people would benefit by going to talk to a therapist to hash out just shit that's in their head. And because as a result, we see training and nutrition things just get better over time. Because if you're not addressing things at their core issue, some things will probably fall off the wayside over time. And that's just being upfront about that. Like sometimes we have to refer people out to get the most from making behavior change and habit change stick with the diet, because some people emotionally eat and some people punish themselves with exercise, and then they feel guilty about that. And you can see the knock-on effects it has from there. But above all I wanted to do was to get across, if you've ever heard of the learned helplessness theory before and how that might apply to you. I think we're all guilty of it on some level. I know I am on some level, that if I think that, a certain thing I've done in the past has gone a certain way, that it needs to be that way for the future. Even though I know that that's not the case. And even though I might have like screwed up with things in the past and I've not done things the best way possible, I know I can improve them for the future, but it still affects me in little ways. And I think once you're aware of it, you can improve upon things for the future. You can make them better. You can make training and nutrition a part of your life that adds to your life, like I talked about a lot in this episode. But yeah, I hope that's helpful. Other than that, have a nice day, and we shall chat to you soon. Thank you for tuning in. Bye-bye.